So welcome back to NDA team. Thanks for joining us again. I'm assuming you're here with us because you got a really lovely notification this morning. If you didn't, hit subscribe. I don't want you to miss anything. The last few of season 1 are really worth it, and we're kind of ramping up now to the end. Today's topic has been at the top of everyone's list to discuss, like literally every DM, every email, comment, phone call I've had, people want to talk about it. It's the contentious subject of design awards, so that's what we're going to do today. Welcome to an award-winning episode. So judges, winners, losers, total disagreeers, got guests from literally every side of the fence today. We're going to hash out all the issues. I don't know if we'll get to them all around awards. So I'll let them introduce themselves. Alice, do you want to kick off?
Yes, so hi, I'm Alice Ishiguro-Tosi. I don't really have a specific job title. I'm a bit of an independent creative, currently doing a master's, a bit of freelance, teaching and personal work. And I'm firmly in the middle, I'd say. I've won awards, I've judged awards. I can definitely see the benefits, but can see the negative sides to them as well.
Cool. Mitch, do you want to go?
Oh, I'm up next. All right. Hi, I'm Mitch Paone. I'm the partner and creative director of Dia Studio, also educator across a bunch of schools in Europe. On the awards, I'm in the not interested in awards camp with a few exceptions. There are exceptions to this rule, but in generally, I'm a strong critic of the whole industry, so to speak.
Sweet.
Hey, I'm Rob Duncan. I am one of the partners and creative directors of Mucho here in San Francisco. The first thing I'd like to say is there's 6 partners in Mucho, so this is just my opinion. I think everyone in Mucho actually has a different opinion on awards as well. So I'm not tarring everybody with the same opinion that I have in Mucho. But I'm definitely for awards. I've judged awards, I've won awards, and having an international design agency, and we might speak about that later, I can see the benefits of awards in maybe a slightly different.
Nice.
Hi, I'm Katharina Tudball. I'm creative director at Superunion in London. And I would say I've always been pretty interested in awards throughout my career. So probably coming down on the more positive side of things.
Awesome. And by now you know me, I'm Katie Cadwell. My pronouns are she, her. I'm definitely here to stir the pot today. I've been looking forward to this one, and I've got so many opinions from people, especially on design Twitter, that I'm going to be relaying. But before we get into that side of the argument, I was thinking we might start with the pros. I think it's sort of forgotten when we discuss design awards. We often talk about it in relation to designers and how it makes designers feel and kind of profile building. But I wanted to talk about clients. So it'd be cool if anyone, how do clients feel about awards? Do they get them? Do they come to you because you're award winning? I guess, do clients care is my first question.
I can start that off with a little bit of opinion on that. I think there is this general perception clients don't care about awards. You don't get work. Just, clients aren't looking at blogs necessarily, design blogs, definitely not books. That's an old-fashioned way, but what I find is when I've worked with a client, sorry for the American sirens in the background. When we've worked in clients and we've won awards with them, they love it when we tell them that they've won an award working with us. And that tends to help new business, extended business from them come, maybe the further year, or, one of the best ways of keeping business coming in is to work with clients you've already worked with in the past. So I think it's important. They enjoy it. But they also then refer us, if they've enjoyed the process of working with us, if they've won awards working with us, they then tell their friends when they're asked, do you know a good designer? They'll say, yes, Mucho did this, they won awards. So I think that really helps in terms of, do clients, do they care about awards? It's not directly, but I think indirectly, it's up to us to help clients care in a way about awards. If we just leave it and just say, do they care or not? I don't think they really do.
I guess, Kath, I wanted to ask you, because you've won some projects being very notorious and kind of cleaned up across the board in all the different award schemes. So do you get clients come to you like, you did this award-winning work, I want to win awards too?
I think some of those projects certainly attract new business. You know, people are interested in something like this. Now, we wouldn't kind of want to sell something like a project that we've done before, but it certainly does. You know, people notice them. I think it's also just a really useful shortcut to show that you are an agency that is about creativity in a really basic sense. Just that being able to sort of see the award-winning status does just give clients a certain reassurance that this is a very creative place. So I think that sometimes even just seeing those lists, which might make you kind of puke when you see them on people's websites of how many awards they've got, it's a useful shortcut.
Yeah, I guess, Mitch, if you don't really have that, right? The clients aren't coming to you because you win awards, because generally as a rule you don't enter them.
The last award I won was in 2008. And that was the last award show I ever wanted to enter because of the whole experience I had with it. So, and I think for me, I'll be candid, it was the Art Directors Club Young Guns. And then I was asked to be a juror on that. And then when I saw the jury process, I saw the actual process of being a juror. And then really quickly understood the politics that were involved in who got in, how things got chosen, all this stuff. I was like, I don't want anything to do with this. So at that point, I think it became very deliberate. Like, the work needs to speak for itself. If we're doing really good work, then it should just work itself out. In our case, we've been lucky, and it certainly has. We work with massive clients, and the awards aren't really a point of discussion. And we've had clients try to submit our projects to award shows, and we're staying out of it. If you want to, fine, but we're staying out of that submission process. You can do it if you want. So it always has been. I think that experience kind of shook me. So I don't know. It's less about the awards for the clients, but I think it opens up the politics of the award show a lot. That, to me, got me nervous about the whole thing.
Yeah. Actually, I was going to ask Alice from a slightly different point of view. Your awards, I guess, were really profile building. So not just to clients care. When you were looking to change jobs, do agencies care? Do you put that stuff on your CV? And then now that you're independent, I guess, is that something that you use to sell yourself to clients?
I think definitely when you're a junior trying to move on, I think it does help if you've won some awards, because it can kind of show, one, your involvement. It's something you can speak about. But then it was interesting kind of going, I guess, freelance and independent, and then going abroad, in that you feel like it's a way in with a bit of gravitas, but I think ultimately it's down to whether they perceive it in that way or not. I think it's down to the individual, isn't it, of what they can see. But I do put it on my CV, I put it on my website. Not that I feel it makes my worth, but just because it is something that you can add in case it's of benefit, I'd say.
I would say that travelling that you mentioned just there is really important. And I think that's what made me realize how important awards are, not for the reasons that most people think about. So, for example, in our studio, we have British, Australian, Chinese, Korean, Romanian, not very many Americans actually in our studio. And the only way I can get that talent and people want to move from the UK or Australia to work for us is if they show they've won awards. Because immigration, especially immigration officials, they're judging it. They're not specialists in design. They judge it on awards, whether you're an actor, designer, writer, whatever. So having awards listed has really helped people travel. It helped me come over to the States. It helped me stay here when it comes to green cards. I had to show that I won awards to get a green card. So do my designers at the same time. So I think personally that's where awards are really helpful for us as a studio. We don't show them on the website. We don't say we've won awards. Everybody's an award-winning design agent, But I think using it internally to help the culture and help grow this kind of international design studio, awards are really, really important.
Yeah, I can
It's
kind
funny
of.
that you bring that up. Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
Sorry. Someone just kind of came at me on that subject because I tweeted something about we don't do this, and then
Yeah, that
I
was
had
me.
a 50-50 camp of people.
No, I'm just joking.
Well, and that's kind of an interesting thing because in American immigration, and it's interesting because I'm also an immigrant in a different country, and that wasn't one of the classifications to get visas. So that was one of the arguments that came back to me, and I said, well, if I'm a immigration officer in the U.S., they don't know the difference between ABC Young Guns versus Joe Schmo Ad Club in New Jersey. The award is just a award. So I threw it back. I was like, well, you could have just gotten some random awards, and that would actually suffice in the eyes of the immigration versus the eyes of the industry. So, it, but I do understand and empathize that because that wasn't definitely something that I had brought
And I'll
up
tell you what,
or thought
Mitch, you're
about the
absolutely
awards
right.
thing.
Some people do that too. They know the boxes to tick, and in order to get in, they do it themselves. We've had it, designers do this as well. It can be done as well. It doesn't have to be D&AD Art Directors Club. It could be a local design award from a small town in China, and it ticks the box, gets you. So I guess that's a question. Does it have to be? You know, it always helps when it is that D&AD because you have to prove as well if it's that, or if it's one of the big awards. You know, is it on the same level as kind of an Oscar for an actor? Is it on, especially if you go for the big O ones? There's kind of different types of ways you can come in and travel around the country. So it takes a lot longer on visas on an H1B, or if you have the smaller awards. But if you can show that that's a really high award and prove it, you know, you're right. Immigration officers don't know, but you've got write-ups from their award schemes, and it really helps in travel on visas to get in quicker, or to get a better immigration award, and also green card. If you have lower awards, it's going to take you 2 or 3 years to get a green card in America. If you have the O1, you can get it in 5 to 6 months. So the level of awards does make a bit of a difference.
Just
That's
on
only
that,
for people
like
that care about that, though, obviously.
just on that like level of awards. Say you've got like an inbox of 50 portfolios from grads, and you see a couple of one new blood. Isn't that a shortcut? Kath, you're nodding. Is that a shortcut? So you go for them first because you feel like they've got a little bit of I don't know, that kind of cements that they've got something to offer, or there's going to be something good in that folio.
I think we're always interested to see what's coming through D&AD's education schemes, the various ones. I was involved with D&AD as a trustee as well, so I kind of have seen lots of different sides of the award side, but also the education side. And so whether that's academy, new blood, or the awards themselves, or shift now as well, which is students who haven't been through university, there's a level reached that's, again, it's handy to take a look at those people. They're usually worth looking at and they're interesting. It might make you a bit lazy. You should probably be casting your net a bit further as well. But certainly, I think even when I was at college a long time ago, the D&AD student awards were important to us and very hard to win, just like professionals. And it sort of sets that up as being something to aim for.
Mitch, were you shaking your head when I asked that question?
Yeah, I mean it's of course it's a not thing for our studio at all, and I mean I think we're pretty specific. So like what we're looking for in specific talent is there that has to be illustrated within their work immediately, and the words are really irrelevant to that. And so and maybe it's the criteria of the hiring too. Our studio is quite small and quite specific in what we're doing, so it really just needs to be illustrated directly in their work. And I think we're immediately looking at that. We don't have like a resource manager cutting through portfolios and stuff. Like I'm the one looking at the emails of the new business. Then I know what I'm looking for. So that wouldn't really necessarily hit the criteria for us.
Yeah.
I think
And
it's more that
Alice,
we've just, sorry.
Oh, go for it.
I think it's more just that we found that those people coming through tend to be pretty good. So it's not necessarily looking out for them, but it does seem to be a quality to win those for D&AD specifically.
Yeah, when you're looking for great talent, you'll know from the letter or the way the email they're going to be good even before you see the work, and then you'll see the work and you'll go, yep, and then you'll read through it, and if there's awards that they've won that are recognisable to us, that are really well respected, kind of the ice, it's a cherry on the cake. Then you go, okay, so they don't have to win awards, because any good designer can see great talent whether or not they've won an award or not.
And I know that it was a long time ago, well, not too long ago, Alice, but obviously, do you think that helped you get in the door? You think that helped you get your first job, the fact that you'd been involved in awards and, kind of won some, and was that a big part, do you think, in like helping you get into the industry?
I think so. Well, when I was at university, they always tried to say, what can make you stand out? Because we were kind of told lots of studios get so many applications, so you need to be able to kind of call upon those things that can add that extra level. Whether it made a difference or not, I'd have to ask the studios I applied to, but I feel like to be able to put it on my cover letter and kind of use the promotion side, I guess, of New Blood and what came with that, I think it does help get kind of one step further, possibly.
Yeah. Sweet. That's a nice amount of positivity, isn't it? So we're going to go into some negatives, because boy, is the list long. If I read out some of these DMs unedited, we would definitely be explicit. So we may as well just go for it. Let's talk about the cost. D&AD prices aren't out for 2022 yet, but they range between £200 and £500. ADC is $100 up to $700. This is per entry, of course. So, and some of these categories are so nuanced, right? They're so niche. So you could have an amazing, huge brand job, and you might want to put it into copywriting, illustrator, brand, yada, yada, yada. List goes on. Cannes Lions is just unbelievable, 650 all the way up to 2,000. There are millions more. So it would be really amiss of us not to acknowledge that there's an exclusivity to them and there's a privilege to them, and perhaps if you're a bigger studio, it's easier to do it. So what does everyone think about the price? I feel like everyone's going to have a say on this.
I can start the negative tone on this one. So so this is the heart of the issue, that award shows are businesses and aren't necessarily serving the interests of the creative industry. Because this is why there's exceptions, because if I look at the Swiss Design Awards, for example, free entry, you get $20,000 if you win it, that supports grants and stuff. Those are exceptions because they're funded and they're free and enter. And they're literally supporting projects, where this is like you pay a huge amount of money to get something, just to actually have to pay for the trophy if you win too. Got to add that. So then you see that there's a structure there that's set up as a business, and then the politics and then the problems start to arise. This is where I have a lot of issues. So the cost of entry makes it exclusive. If you are a smaller studio, it's expensive, but then like, what do you get out of it? It's, maybe you get a trophy or so. So then who are the judges? Why are they being chosen? Then you can start to pick this apart from a business perspective. If you just look at that whole industry as designed just on the premise to kind of take advantage of this, maybe an insecurity that we have to prove ourselves by having awards for our work. So I'm just going to leave it there, because that might open up a can of worms to discuss. Yeah, it's an industry.
I mean, I can speak to experience with D&AD specifically, but also just observations about other schemes. I think it's clear that the big holding companies and the big ad agencies that enter many, many projects and have huge award budgets are a big part of this machine, right? They are entering the vast majority. And if one of those holding companies drops out in a year, it's absolutely devastating for the awards industry. So they are making up a huge amount of this stuff. And there is a big difference, I think, between advertising industry and the design industry, even in an agency like the one I work for, which is big. there's been lots of discussions at DNAD about the price for design versus advertising, because of the way that the work is different and the fees are different. And I think at certain points there might have been tiering for smaller agencies under a certain number of employees and things like this, which should continue, in my opinion, because certainly for those small and medium agencies that choose to enter every year, it's a huge cost and a huge decision-making process in what to enter. Even for bigger agencies, I think when you have many projects and many teams, you've got to be quite strict with yourself. You can't blanket bomb, but you do see in the advertising category, certainly that's happening a lot. So I think there's a big imbalance there, and the pricing should reflect the reality of what we charge. Even, you know, bigger agencies, we're not doing the same as advertising necessarily.
I was going to ask, do you think that, you know, maybe this is more like Catherine Robb, how much you spent, how much the agencies spend on awards on average? I did ask a few people, but people were a bit sheepish. Very, very, very cagey to admit how much they actually spend per year on awards.
It depends if we do any work that's good enough to enter the awards for us. I mean, year in year, sometimes you have, you know, you're not going to enter everything you do, although there are some agencies, I won't name which ones they are, but they do enter everything they do into every single category, even to the point where if they've just done a logo, just putting the logo in the top left-hand corner of a website means they enter it into web design and interactivity, because it does the tiniest bit of animation, which is slightly annoying. But yeah, I mean, this last year, we did have some lovely projects we had that we wanted to enter. So we spent a good amount of money entering awards, but not every award, just the ones that we really care about, such as DNAD, Art Director Club, Type Directors Club, Creative Review Annual, and I think Design, and that was it. So the hardest ones to get, we could try and enter, because we understand that if it does win, it means a lot more, and we understand the politics of the jury, etc., to get into. But I'd imagine there's agencies that every year they enter everything they ever do and have a big budget, and we don't. We just enter if we think it's got a chance, or if we'd like it to be seen.
But I imagine there are also smaller agencies that enter a lot because they're trying to build profile, and they're trying to, you know, for all the things we talked about, attract clients, attract talent, and then that could have huge ramifications. And I just wanted to, because Alice, you've just done the most beautiful personal project, which I won't, you know, but entering that into awards, would you consider it, or do you just feel like you're not in a financial situation to be able to do it justice?
No, I didn't consider that. I think the reason I did the personal project is that's almost my award, if that makes sense. I think when I was younger, I did, you know, I strove for awards because it's a way of it's a gratification, isn't it? It's a nice thing to have. But I think slowly I've turned to personal work as my kind of release, I suppose, for that. So I haven't really thought about it, but I don't think, saying that, if I was interested in it, I think the cost would be, it would be slightly off-putting, because you need to put that investment kind of in yourself, especially during these times, I think. So
yeah. I just want to chat quickly about free award schemes, and I guess you could say that if we're looking to find the best work, then they should be free. How to word this, just to go for it. Do you think the standard of all those entrants will be much lower, because anyone who has a computer can enter this award and they don't have to pay for it? And so then, you know, I just wonder if that there is a bar for a reason.
I think it would be. I think you'd get, to your point, every project entered, and I think that self-selecting and, you know, creatives entering the work and making a judgment of, this isn't good enough, this year we're not entering, or next, you know, but we've had a brilliant year, we're going to find the money because we've got some amazing stuff. You don't enter the same amount every year. Free stuff. I mean, I've judged awards where there's a lot entered, and you kill so much really quickly, and maybe that's fine, but and it's much more democratic and open if everyone can enter for free. How that's funded in terms of everything else that needs to happen is a question, I suppose, there. But you just have to go through a massive cull. You'd spend days and days doing the online rounds and getting rid, and then you'd be left with a few things.
That's a good point, because I think what you said is how it's funded would be an issue, because you have to have the judges.
You do.
But what's happened in the past, I think, is remote judging has made it cheap for people to get the judges, because you don't have to pay for them to travel.
Exactly.
But I don't think that's been good for awards. I think that's been negative. That's really bad, because I did it that way, and for one, I found it hard to find the time. I always kept putting it off, and then I rush it. Whereas I much preferred when I would go somewhere, have 2 days to just dedicate to looking at work, also meet people and discuss it as a jury and judge. And that takes money, because then the scheme has to go up somewhere, fly you there, get big award space to show all the work, put it up, volunteer, etc. So I don't want to change the subject, but I think remote judging and judging awards, as Mitch got put off by seeing the process that goes behind it. I think that's really an important part of this whole discussion. I think as well.
It's really important that judging is taken seriously and people invest that time and the discussion and show respect to the work. And it's just coming back, right? In-person judging. The remote stuff had definitely more international juries, really good. Lots of people from all over the world together. That's a good thing. And also the award ceremony not being in person. And so then it's like, well, how valuable is this award if I can't stand up on stage in front of my peers and everyone's clapping? Maybe it's also less of a thrill.
Why have I paid all this much money to enter the awards, and where's all this money going?
Exactly.
All the judges are remote. There's no event party. There's no book. There's nothing else. It's still as expensive as it has been, even more so than it was last year and the year before during the pandemic. Then where is this company, and where is this money gone in the last few years, and how is it being reinvested, etc.? They have to be transparent with that, I think, and tell the community.
I mean, if you think about free award shows, you got to think about like how the entries are actually set up anyway. So I don't think it lowers the bar. I think this is a bad example, but I've been in Switzerland the last 3 years, and the Swiss Design Awards are free to enter. The Most Beautiful Swiss Books are free to enter. But also you have to have a Swiss residency, or there's criteria that weeds out things. And also it's a really rich small country that can afford these things too. So there's some caveats there. But that being said, that it doesn't lower the bar. I mean, everybody submits. They go through the process of weeding through things. And I think, if there's criteria set, if they know the judges are who they are, they're excited about seeing the work in front of those people, you're going to get the best work submitted, depending on, the organization and the judges that are there. So and to top that off, I think what's interesting about that example is the Swiss Design Awards provides a $20,000 grant to the winners across the categories. So then there's actually financial gain and support from the actual institution providing the award moving forward, not just a trophy or a thing to put on there. You get that, and then you get assistance. So then there really is a push to get the best work in there, because there's some real gain right out the gate. Now, that being said, it's Switzerland, it's rich and small, so then they can do these things. But that isn't to say that an organization couldn't do that. Like, there's certainly organizations that could do that, and I think, I think the Cooper Hewitt has their awards, but those are selected just from people's work. Those aren't like submitted. People just get awards because they get chosen based on what they've been doing. Like, those are slightly different in their regard, and that kind of hits my caveat. So I don't think the free or cost of entry thing is an issue for quality. I think it actually is it's a deterrent for people to, like, smaller people or independent people wouldn't even do that because they have to pay for it. But It's just an interesting analogy from this micro example here, but
I mean, there are a few, I guess, like that select like that, like the design museums awards or whatever, you know, selecting, right, rather than people entering. And I think that is really interesting because then you really are going out there and looking for the standout projects without putting yourself forward at all. They're really interesting.
right.
I think
And
what you said, Mitch,
that's my
about
exception.
I think what you said, Mitch, about the judges as well in that last comment was important. That the judges are judges that people really respect, really know, really look up to. They're well known, and there's this. You know, now we're going to get into the equality and diversity thing. Has remote judging allowed more people that didn't have the opportunity to judge to be judges? Is that a good thing? I'm not sure it is. I think when you see the quality of judges, you know, that helps people enter too. And it also, if you're awarded by somebody you respect, you know, that you feel there's almost that circle of excellence that then keeps things going and improving the design community on itself.
What makes a quality judge though? Like, is it someone who's won an award gets to judge the same award, and then we go round and round in a circle, and we end up in an echo chamber, and that's why we've ended up with the design industry that we've got, because we elevate the people the same as us? Like, I just question that. How do we choose them?
This is my problem. This is my problem, because there's a good judges, like, we idolize people or think they're great people to put the work in front of. But on the flip side, person being in that position, I'm like, this is quite uncomfortable that I have to pit other creative people against each other in a competitive format. So right there, then everybody has their motives and their politics. So, like, you know, someone who's involved in an agency or friends with so and so may be nicer on certain judges and other things. There's certainly bias that gets into the decision making, without a doubt. I'm guilty of it when I did it. I was like, I didn't mean to, but I just preferred this kind of work because that's my preference, and someone could play to that easily. So, and then it opens up this idea that it becomes this competitive aspect that's like based on a subjective opinion on judges or group of judging, gets really complicated and weird, and to me quite uncomfortable from like a personal thing. Like, why am I having to compete, and these people are the people that are the gatekeepers of this? So then it kind of unravels, at least for me.
There has to be some kind of way of picking judges, though. Otherwise, you know, if you look at an awards, I would look at awards, and if I don't know any of the judges, I probably wouldn't enter, because you know, you tend to, and I don't know if I am. You tend to go, especially for the big ones. You know, when we only enter the big ones, I would look at the judges and go, okay, these guys I know, I respect them, they've been around. You know, you're hoping that people that have been around for years, that have won awards, they don't have to have been around for years. They could have just been somebody young, like young Mitch here, who hasn't been around for years, but he really did something different, you know, in the industry, and will have a different perspective on when he's seeing work. And it's a tricky one, because you're going to get this diversity, equality, you know. And I would say, if we could make awards so that anybody could enter them, that's the better way of ticking those boxes. You know, maybe the judges need to have shown that they know how to look at work. They have some kind of commentary in the community. I don't know what it is, but I'm probably sounding elitist now and upsetting a lot of people on this.
I have some thoughts on this one, because I'd say 20 odd years ago, D&AD was the graphic design jury on D&AD was the same bunch of guys. Every year they went to Brighton or whatever it was in those days, and they judged each other's work, and they had their little gangs, and that really was a thing, I believe, when I was starting out. My first experience judging was really uncomfortable, because I felt there were political decision making going on, and jury presidents leading the jury really, really heavily, to the point of almost bullying some of the more junior people that might have been on that jury. And that gave me a really bad impression after kind of thinking awards were a really good thing, and then seeing some of that put me off a lot to what you've been mentioning. I think that the efforts that have been made in the last 10 years have been extremely important in terms of gender balancing juries and ensuring that where possible, when I've judged with international jurors from Japan, from China, from India, the points of view, the local points of view when looking at work from those countries is completely invaluable, right? The Western jurors don't know what they're looking at in the same way, and we can have really interesting discussions about the value of design in these different places. So international jury is also really important. I do agree that there's got to be some kind of quality of the work of those people to make them eligible in the first place. But I don't think it's about just, as it used to be, you've won a yellow pencil, therefore you are a yellow pencil judge next year. What I think really helps is if the jury president is extremely well briefed, and that they can be super clear on the criteria, and the organization can really help every juror understand what makes this level of award or that level of award. And maybe there's not enough that goes into that, but I think blocking younger people or those who are, you know, just starting out but doing really amazing things from joining that conversation would be a massive backward step.
Do you know how the juries are chosen? You sound like you've been quite involved in the ED kind of award thing. How do they choose?
I mean, it's been a few years since I was inside, if you see what I mean. But I'd say that there's often looking at the winners from last year. Okay, port of call, who's winning.
Okay.
You know, extend that invitation. That still happens certainly, and I'd say that jury presidents usually are awarded, multi-awarded, and have judged before. It used to be a criteria too that you had to have participated in judging to be the lead on the jury. But there's another method, which is recommendation from the community and from the jurors, people put forward, where there might be someone up and coming that hasn't got the profile yet but has done great stuff. And I think getting a really good mix of those people, when we've got younger people on juries who are looking at work that's aimed at young people, when the audience is youth and you've got a bunch of old people going, it's a bit rubbish, you know, you want that voice of someone who's actually that age of the audience. So it's tricky though. And I don't think they get it right every year on every jury, I'd certainly say, but I think it's important to try and mix it up.
I just wanted to ask, Alice, you did it, I think, if not last year, the year before, was it? How did you find it? Was it what you expected?
So I've done New Blood twice, and they've all been remotely for me. And then I did some judging in Tokyo this year, which again, although it was in Tokyo, it was remote. I've had really positive experiences. I haven't had any negative ones, but I can kind of probably understand what Kath's just touched upon, that, you know, I think the jury president or whoever's leading it is really important. And I think in all the instances, they were always asking for everyone's opinion, ensuring that everyone had a voice. I think there's been such a mix. I really like when there's, you know, young people coming in, because I think the industry changes. So we need to also listen to the new generation that's coming in that will be driving it. So I can see, again, I know I'm in the middle with everything, but I can really see that I think you need that wisdom, that experience. But I also think you need to balance that out with a mixture of creatives. But then where that kind of, I think, has its downfall is when suddenly someone who, for example, is an illustrator is judging graphic design. That's where I think the blurred lines kind of come in, and that's not a good mixing up of judges, I think.
There's also a lot of judges sometimes too. I feel like there's too many judges sometimes.
Yeah.
You know how hard it is for everyone to agree on something. The more people you have, it just seems to get even harder.
What is that like for people that haven't been judges before? Is it like battle to the death with playing tug of war over a poster? What's it like coming to the final decisions?
I think
it's also, sorry.
Go on, you go.
I think again it depends on remote or in person, because I think in remote there's always a little delay when you're remote and you don't want to take over somebody like I did, so sorry. But in a room, you together, I think you have a personal connect. You start to get to know your judges as well. So, and it's not just about judging the work. I think you go out to dinner together, drinks together. You're staying in the hotel together. So there's this camaraderie that helps those discussions about what is good work and great work. And again, there's usually the ones that speak more than others, and the shyer ones, and the more outgoing, etc. But I think that plays into a lot. Generally, everyone respects people. I think they respect their opinions.
Yeah, I think
Mitch,
that sorry, just on the number of jurors, I think it's probably a pandemic thing too, that there's been bigger juries to get through online entries and things like that. And I think getting back down to sort of 6 or 7 or whatever, getting together in a room and having real discussions over the work is much better. And I've done the jury president thing a few times, and I think that's where I would certainly make sure that everybody talks a lot, and if it takes forever, it takes forever. But it's a serious thing that you're doing, and to be democratic about it, but also really fight your corner. If you think something is great and people aren't paying it enough attention, you explain why. And if someone's quietly sitting there looking unhappy, then try and make sure they're getting their say as well. So that's why I think the other people facilitating the judging from the organization, if they do that well, in-person judging it can be brilliant in terms of debate and unearthing some things sometimes that people sort of overlook at first, and then it sort of comes to the top. So yeah, I'd agree on some of those aspects. But
I feel like, Mitch, you had the opposite experience. I want to hear why you
No,
gave up awards forever.
It's absurd. It's like completely fucking absurd to me that we just sit in a room and then like battle it out and talk about whose work's better than the next person for these reasons. And for particular reason that we don't really understand that what went into those projects leading into that. For example, we grade branding projects that come out the year they're shipped. Typically, half those projects are rebranded within 2 or 3 years because they failed as projects for the client, but yet they won all these awards because they look beautiful in the award show. And then I start to look at this at a bigger scale. So then we're talking about grading work, not really understanding the full spectrum of what's going on. We're also grading service industry work too, which is complicated because we're dealing with client stuff. It's not like architecture where they win some bid for the project and they build the building they want. There's back and forth with client that made the work the way it is. It may have taken 2-3 years to get there. So I think when we go macro on that, it's uncomfortable. Then all of a sudden you're talking to judges and everybody's arguing this is the typography is better than that, but there's also these other factors that go into the work that we may not be thinking about when we're grading that. On the flip side, if I am a enterer, then I put myself out on a limb saying, hey, this work I think is going to be good. And then it gets not awarded anything. And then you get set with this, oh, I didn't win the award this time. I didn't award this time. I didn't win the award this time. Then the confidence of that person's creativity falters because of this competitive atmosphere. So, and I think, sorry, I probably opened up a lot of stuff because I think there's a lot of problems with the criteria of the awards themselves, particularly in design, because I think to judge award as a good project shortchanges, especially on what the criteria is and how it's presented or where it's going to be. For example, half the stuff that we do is never printed, and then a lot of judges force the stuff to be printed and set in. There's all these disconnects, and then it's just interesting that we are, arguing over these nuanced details and craft essentially, but are missing the picture of things. But anyway, that's a lot. I just kind of dumped a lot there.
I think the criteria is really important because to your point on a rebrand not being judged yet when it's brand new, but there are effectiveness awards, right? And those can be entered too if you want to prove that it had this impact of some sort. But when you're talking like pure design awards, and sorry to bang on about DNOD, but it's the one I know best, the criteria being idea, craft, and relevance, three really simple things to judge. And the idea for me is the bit that makes me like D&AD the most, is that is rewarding a great creative idea. If it's really well crafted and relevant and fit for purpose and all those things, then it can get to that top level. And yes, it is about just creativity and not has it increased sales or whatever. But I suppose when you go back to the history of this organization, that's what D&AD is there to do, to celebrate the great creativity. Many other award schemes say many other things. And it's interesting maybe to hear which award schemes are the most respected internationally, because it's only a few, right?
I think also what's interesting is I judged ADC this year, and then I saw what came out and got judged in D&AD, and I know pretty much the exact same work was being entered by the same studios for each of them.
Yeah.
And then stuff that was winning golds, super gold, the most awarded thing at ADC, didn't even get into D&AD.
Yeah.
And
It
I'm
was a
sitting there
controversial year this year for brand
It
and
was.
graphic design in D&AD.
And I'm
And
just
there's a lot of
thinking
chat about it, yeah.
there was so much great work this year that didn't get into D&AD. And judges have to be told, well, the best committees are, let's be generous. Let's not get all up our own frigging asses here. If we see great work, there is equality, It doesn't have to be. If there's judges that will say, oh, the kerning's out on that, like, I'm not entering it. It's like, yeah, but the idea is brilliant, okay? Come on. And you get into those kind of arguments too. So
what happens if you're in those rooms and I am thinking a little bit back to the boys club of 20 years ago, where it felt like everyone awarded their pals pencils. I don't think we're in that place anymore.
No,
but
I don't think
have we gone the other way? So you see work that your friend did and you're like, oh right, I know them and I know the project so well already. I've read it on brand new. So what do you do in that situation?
I do think it's really interesting that work gets out there and people PR their work instantly. So sometimes people are bored. By the time awards come around, they're like, oh, I've seen it so many times. It might be a good tactic to hold off, don't PR it, right? No one knows who did it. Because there can be a bit of fatigue seeing the same big rebrand again and again. And I also think sometimes when people are on a jury, their standards go crazy. They're like, they go to this point where it's mad what the level that you need to achieve, and you sort of need to pull them back down and get realistic. And to your point about understanding some of the reality of the project, because sometimes you look at something, you think these guys have done an amazing job just to get this through, right? I'm amazed that this client bought this idea. It's not perfect, but they deserve a massive pat on the back because they've got something brilliant through. When you enter and you write that blurb, hopefully a good judge should read it and understand the context. And it might not be the top criteria, but they should be thinking about, within this sector, within this world that this project's in, what has this person achieved? So I think bringing people down a bit in the jury as well, to not be crazy, like that everything's shit, I'm not giving any awards.
I mean, you look at the D&AD annual and 75-80% of it is advertising, and there's a tiny little section on graphic design. And you look and you've seen work over the year on Brand New or wherever in the blogs, and you go, there was so much great work out there. Where's that? How did that not get in? How did that not get in?
I do wonder if designers are mean.
Well, I think what designers
one thing that's interesting,
egos when they're judges, suddenly they're like the best designers themselves, and they're like the ultimate hero of design. I don't know.
What feeds into the entry too, this is like another thing that I have a big problem with, is that case study that goes to the judging awards isn't the real work that's on
that's
the
my
website
next
or the
question.
How do you mean
it drives me crazy. I'm like, that case study looks nothing like what was activated. Therefore, this is bullshit. This is this is fake news branding that got. Yeah.
Let's talk about that. No, that's my
question.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for moving us on. Let's talk about that. I want to ask, and I know it's tricky because everyone knows where everyone's worked, so say as much as you feel comfortable. But Alice, you've worked at some studios that have won a lot of awards, and I assume you've been part of entering those awards. Is it legit? Are we redoing mock-ups to enter? Are we, I mean, I've seen a case study recently that had a branded fire extinguisher. I doubt very much the clients paid for a branded fire extinguisher. So have you always entered stuff that's real, or when you've seen stuff, have you gone, oh, I don't know if that actually happened?
I think it's tricky. So usually for example, when you're doing a brand guidelines and you want to put in the conceptual ideas and the conceptual work, you create the visuals then, I think, a lot of the time. And yes, sometimes they're not actually produced, but it's still part, I think, of the process of the project that you're trying to sell in this brand to the client. So there have been times that I've worked on, visuals and mock-ups that have been entered to awards, but I think it's with the intention of this is as we were doing the project rather than, okay, we need to enter awards, what can we add to it? I don't think it's that kind of level of fakeness, but there is obviously, we can't kind of mock up absolutely everything. Or, the client may not have the budget for some ideas, but they really like the ideas and they say, oh, maybe in 2 years we'll produce it. So I think
I think that's real work though. If it's real work that the client saw, that the client signed off, it's in the guidelines, it's inspiration, that's part of the project. Making new stuff afterwards that it never existed before is different.
There are some fabled projects that are... Go on, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just piling on that. There's literally 3D renderings of signage for, places that this doesn't exist as an actual piece, but that would be crucial for the actual real case study. So, and I have a real big problem with that because as a studio, the success of the work is that it actually made it through the finish line, is activated at a quality level. And if it doesn't, then there was bad meetings at the end, something didn't get approved, someone took over something, execution falls short, then that should be the final work. That's the hardest part of the job, is to get it through the finish line at that level. And if it doesn't quite get there and then you still submit the stuff that you thought was badass, but it's not really the same, then that's, to me, not being honest.
Juries do that though, and they're briefed as well when they're judging. I mean, you got a load of live surface kind of banners, etc. You can see it, and you kind of know the work of those studios as well. So you've already seen it come out before you're judging it. So it's something I think jurors should just be aware of. I know D&AD is very
How
good
easy is it to spot though? I'm not
It's
going to
getting
name
harder.
names
It's
because I've had
definitely
a few people in the DMs say this whole project was fake. This whole thing didn't happen. We had downtime in the studio, and I couldn't possibly. Obviously, I invited everyone on.
Number one thing you can do is just go to the actual brand's website, not the case study, and that tells the major story usually 95% of the time. Usually there's a mock-up of the website and the actual website. And and if we're doing branding and now, that digital application should be on point, and it shouldn't be a flabby version of what's case study. I don't know. That's just me being a purist.
I feel like there might be some agencies out there who have a dedicated team just to doing the case studies for their website.
Yeah, me too.
Because I don't know how you get enough time to put those case studies and renders and things together.
And to get them ready so fast, right? It's a whole other team needing to do that, because the design team doing the work can't do that.
No, we're on to the next project.
Exactly.
We don't have time.
And if it's real work, you can just show the real work and you don't have to mock it up. So.
Yeah.
It's photography, isn't it? Part of it's not just the work, it's then the photography of the work, and it's a whole, whole different.
I think the fake work thing is, I think there is a lot of chat about that on juries, and people do sometimes, do the research, ask the awards organisers to get more information on the background of the project. I mean, if something feels like it might be entirely fake, it's really hard to police, I think, when it comes to what we're talking about, which is how far have you tweaked the case study. And I think it's just a bit of integrity required from the people entering, right? But I know people will do anything to win. And in advertising, maybe it's quite notorious, right? Like this one ad space that was one day that ran in to win the award when the rest of the campaign was rubbish or something. It feels like there's a lot of nasty stuff that goes on. It's just it's just not very good practice in my view.
The other question I wanted to ask is, do people mark down because of their opinion of the client? So, like a good example I can think of, and he wouldn't mind me saying because he's been on the podcast, is Fiverr rebrand for Koto got absolutely slammed because of the client rather than. I mean, I don't want to comment on the actual work itself, but the design industry had a problem with the client and that impacted how they talked about the work. Does that happen in rooms with juries? If it's a nasty client, do people not want to judge the work?
Yeah, I think it does. There's a lot of, you will have noticed that, especially in Cannes, to win big, often it's got to be for a great cause, something very emotional. That's easier in advertising to tell these emotional stories than it is in design. But you see that these kind of social good or good cause works are winning a lot, and it can sometimes be the jury feel that is part of the criteria, and it's not always. So I think that's really important too. Where there are specific awards for good causes or for charitable work or things like that, that's a really important part of it. If you are just judging on something like idea, craft, and relevance, it might be for a horrible person. You should probably park that opinion because it's not part of the criteria, right? And if you really don't want to be involved, step away from the jury, don't get involved. Because you can go, there are categories and whole award schemes that will award social good. Now, there's a lot of debate with that with D&AD because we've had certain presidents who say it should be part. We shouldn't be judging anything that's bad, that does bad in the world. And I think that's a whole other debate, right?
So it's again, like, how can you make it a more subjective process is what I'm hearing. It's like it's people's opinions, people's experience. It's to do with the client. We're judging beautiful work next to strategic work. So I guess the massive question is, creativity is so subjective. Is it even possible to add this criteria, and is it possible to judge it equally?
I think there are different award schemes for different types. Yeah. Design effectiveness is, proven. It's been designed. This design has increased sales or done good for the world, etc. over time, and you can't enter those straight away because it takes time to get that. But maybe things like D&AD, other big award schemes that are very much more design focused. There is a subjectivity to it, but if you have a good reason for choosing it through ideas, craft, etc., then that should take the opinion out of it. It should. It doesn't always.
I think it's entirely too nuanced and complicated to be judging, particularly branding work, I think is where I'm kind of going to throw this on that nugget. Mm-hmm. I feel like that whole sector is a fundamentally flawed space to try to judge in some sort of specific way. It's way too complicated. I think it also, if you had to do the great branding job that was highly effective for an oil company and that wouldn't get judged well because of the company, that's already problematic because then there's bias. You also have, effectiveness over the long term versus maybe it's poppy and cool and good for the case study, so it wins the awards in the short term. It's way too big and complex of something to deduce down into a competitive sort of thing. It's not like, that's why I brought the architecture thing up, because those are, submission of this is my building, I build the building. It's not like there's a lot of back and forth necessarily with clients and strategy and all this stuff. It's like, here's the piece of design that I made. Does the chair sit well? Does it work? It's more objective in a lot of these other, creative environments. But I think branding as a whole is way too complex to even remotely try to piece it down into one little nugget. But that's, again,
I think it would be really interesting.
My point of view.
it would be really interesting to like only judge branding after 3 years, say, you know, and gather the guidelines work, the inspirational stuff, the original stuff, but then also see how that's applied by the people that have to apply it. I think that would be a really interesting way to judge branding.
I
Could have a longevity.
100%, because I've rebranded work that won huge awards within a short period of time after it was released. So I know very close from the pain points of the actual companies that did these projects. They're coming to us to solve a problem that the original project failed to do, although won a ton of awards. And this has happened a lot of times. And I don't know, this happens to be the Fix-It studio of broken rebrands that won awards. So like, it happens all the time.
That'd make
and
a
I'm
great
like, oh my
annual.
God, this won all these awards.
And Alice, what were you going to say?
It happens, and it's like
it's common, yeah.
I think the other problem is that all of the stuff that happens behind the scenes with a project that, you know, I think as creators, we can all understand, you know, the bonkers feedback or the strategy that takes quite a lot of time to build up to a project. That's never really portrayed in an award scheme. And possibly not thought about, you know, when you're judging a project, like, okay, what have they, you know, what hurdles have they kind of overcome to get to this point? So I think that's the other really tricky thing with branding that I saw a completely different side to when I worked at Johnson Banks, because strategy was such an integral part, and it does influence, I think, the aesthetic and the outcome of a project quite a lot. So I think that's tricky when you're comparing that to a project that's maybe, you know, completely self-initiated, complete creative freedom. How do you then, look at those two?
Totally. There's a couple of people in the DMs who are saying exactly that they've had work that they think would have won awards, and then at the last minute, the client's had a wobbly, and they feel like that happens to them all the time, and then they never get that kind of recognition that they're looking for. But I've got a few more questions, and I want to make sure I get to them, so I'm gonna move on. Someone said that the people who hate them don't win them; they're bitter. I've heard from a couple of people that they had done a really acclaimed project. It should have won. It didn't win, and they haven't entered since. So, Mitch, is that what happened? Is that what happened to you? Did you enter and it didn't win, and now you're like, oh, never again?
no, maybe it's a thing that I have a problem with. Once I've gotten into something and seen the inner workings of it, I tend to retreat. And this is everything. Like everything, my whole life I've been like that. So won this award, got an organization, checked it out. This is a little too complicated and political for me, so therefore I'm not going to take part in this, and then be critical or get invited to be in part of an organization and see what's actually going on there. I don't actually really like it. So then you realize, I think what I've realized is that, you know, we've idolized or built these things up for ourselves, and then immediately your expectations are completely like missed, and then you're disappointed in what the reality is. And one of my big points I brought up in one of my tweets is that I start to think about the mental health impacts of this competitive thing and expectations about winning stuff and all of these things. And then thinking about what we do creatively, dealing with a service-oriented creative business, and already have the stressors of that. And then we started to pit each other's up in this, you know, competition. Then it can kind of become quite, I think, the negative for a lot of people that aren't maybe confident enough to do that, and it may be discouraging for their future projects and stuff. So I think once I saw that larger scale, I said, no way, this is not a positive effect as a whole for an individual creative person who's just trying to find their way through this life of what you decided to do as a designer. So that's my thing. I didn't win or lose. I got in and was like, this is a little not what I expected. So I don't know if I feel comfortable with it anymore.
I'd love to hear about. Oh, go for it.
Sorry, Kate. Just on that, because I know that you won the Rising Star Award for Design Week. I can't remember when.
Hey, you don't ask me questions on the podcast. What's going on here?
No, just on that, and because a couple of years earlier I was nominated for that and I didn't win, and I was absolutely gutted. And I was like, you know, really as a junior, it was a bit of a like, oh, why didn't I win? But then I think in a sense it almost like through the years, I know it sounds a bit cliche, but it made me, you know, kind of be like, okay, what can I improve on, rather than seeing it as like, oh, I didn't win, I'm gonna kind of go into my shell. It just kind of encouraged, I'd say, and a bit more. So I think there are but two sides again to that.
I'd love to hear, Kath and Rob, like what it's like when you come back, on that day when it's announced, and how the teams react when you do and don't win.
My whole career has been spent at studios that value awards, right? So I was at Johnson Banks at a very small studio, and I can see how important awards can be for individual practitioners and small studios to really have that profile, just as much as somewhere like Superunion, where I am now. My experience, when I got nominated for something like the first year that I was working, it was super thrilling. I was very excited about it. I gate crashed the awards because my boss knew that we hadn't won. He knew, and he was like, I'm not paying for the ticket. But I was so excited that I went with my design partner, and we just gate crashed and walked in and minesweeped all the wine, and it was super exciting even though we didn't win, right? We were nominated, we were beaten by the partners, which is where I ended up next, ironically, but it was it was disappointing, yes, but it was I've certainly bought into this from my student days, and the highs and lows. So I do try to prepare the teams to not make it everything, because if it's a great project, you should be fucking proud of it, right? And the award, it might come and then you can be super excited, but it might not. But it doesn't mean that the work's any less. So I think you do have to have that confidence in yourself that you know what good work is. And then if you win, it's super exciting. I have a lot of respect for agencies that don't enter. I remember when I started, GTF didn't enter, and I thought they were amazing, and I really respected them. And I think actually opting out is super cool. It's just like, we don't do it. Pentagram didn't enter for ages. But the ones that do, they kind of need to keep doing it because it's part of their identity. And you can see that with a small agency or a big agency. And so, it's up to you if you like it or not, but it's certainly helpful for some people.
Yeah, we get disappointed if we don't win. It doesn't get awarded the level that it thought it would, and the designers do too. But at the same time, it makes us strive again. We just go, "Oh, I thought that was a great idea. All right, let's carry on. Let's just do our best work next year and enter again." Or we just go, "Oh, it's a shit jury. They didn't know what they were talking about. Blame the jury. No idea what they're doing." You just got to take it with a bit of humour, I think, with awards too. I think getting all tied up with too many things, I think there's benefits to awards, there's pros and cons, as we've discussed. And just, I think, as you were saying, going to the events is great, just to meet up with your fellow mates that you might not have seen for many years, or, just have a drink together and to discuss. I miss that too. I remember in London, I've been in San Francisco now 20 years. I do remember in London going to D&AD talks, not the awards, but going to talks, which were great. And then going out to the pub afterwards, and everybody was there. You knew everybody, even though you were in a different. And you'd say, "Oh, well done on that piece of work," or "Good job on that piece of work." In the back of your mind, you're thinking, "You bastard, I'm going to beat you next time." There is some kind of.
You're in for the beers.
Yeah, exactly. That's all I'm saying. The free beers and the free bars.
All right.
But there's competitiveness,
There you go.
Awards helps improve the industry. There is a. If you take it like. So go, Mitch.
Finish a project and then forget about it. You're on to the next. The award is like a rehash of what happened on that project that I don't want to have to think about again. And then it just reappears like, oh shit, here we are. Oh, I had a whole year of this client that I don't want to see ever again, and then it's like over. So, but again, yeah. And granted, I've recluse. I live in like the French Alps now, and I don't see anybody anymore. So it's like, yeah. So maybe I'm like just trying to pull away from society as far as possible. But no, yeah. I would be in it for the beers. I'm with you on that. Like this whole gathering, that stuff.
I mean, I would say I think they're less relevant now than they were 20 years ago, because 20 years ago is how I found the good agencies to go and apply to, right? I went through the D&AD index, cross-referenced it with the Design Week Awards League, because no one had any work on their website. I had to read Creative Review and print magazines to just even find out who'd done what. So of course, that was a great way to narrow down who was doing good stuff then. Now we can all promote our own work. You're probably going onto Instagram and saying who's got the most followers, they're a good agency. It's a totally different way of judging things, and there's much more opportunity for people to just opt out of awards, and I think that's a good thing for people like you. If you don't want to be part of it, you don't have to play the game, right? There's always going to be amazingly successful people that just don't want to get involved, and that's fine, I think.
As I was saying at the beginning, I think it's my opinion as a partner of 6 partners in Mucho. I have this opinion, I like awards and I'm for them. Many of my other partners would say they're completely against them and don't enter. But we enter and they don't. As you said, it's up to you. There's no right or wrong.
I just want to...
You brought up the next NDA... sorry.
Yeah, well...
impact of social media on awards. Yeah.
I don't even know how to begin to unpack that one, but I just want to add, because someone sent this in as a DM that kind of led us on your point, Kath, which I thought was really nice, is I'm not really referencing things from awards shortlists. I'm referencing agencies across the world, one-man bands in their bedrooms. Work has never been more visible, and they went on to say that they feel like awards schemes have never been less relevant. But I just think that's an interesting thing when we're all pulling references together for projects over the next couple of weeks to think about, actually, is any of this have we seen any of these in the shortlists? And on that bombshell, I'm going to wrap us up because we've been going forever and we're on a few different time zones. I knew this was going to be really good. I got a bit fired up in the middle, so that must be a good sign. Thank you so much, everyone, for your experience, being super candid and not being afraid to disagree, which is what it's all about, really. So thanks, everyone.
Great, thank you.